Hi, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of Theater Tuesdays. And this is the show where I like to talk with theater friends about all things musical theater. And I'm theater critic Rachel Wagner. Today, I have special guest with me, Tanner Tate, who his performance as Jekyll and Hyde recently really impressed me. And so I wanted to have you on and learn a little bit more about you. And so thank you so much, Tanner, for coming on the podcast.
Of course, I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Yeah, well, so this is the first time that you're on, so we like to give you a chance to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about how you developed your love of musical theater.
Well, my name is Tanner Tate, like you said. I'm 26 years old currently, and I do theater for fun. And
Mhm.
well, I have always said that. I've always said that I just do it for fun. It's not like a life thing for me. But last year, like we mentioned before we started recording, I started teaching voice lessons, and it's kind of become my life. And so I can't really
Yeah.
say that anymore, which is
Mhm.
it's something that I was always very sure in saying I'm not a theater kid. Like that's not what I am. I just am a person who enjoys it, but I'm quickly becoming that because it's consuming so much of my life now. And like when I was doing Jekyll and Hyde, I was working on two shows at once. And
Oh my
um,
gosh.
when I just my story of when I started performing. So I have been performing for most of my life. When I was young, my parents got me involved with some performing groups. I would be like, if you go to like a water park or something, and there's that little troop of kids that are dancing in the corner, and there's some like that's kind of stuff that I would do as a kid. And so I would do that for a long time, and I really was just doing it because my mom was telling me to do it. And honestly, I didn't enjoy it very much. Um, but I do remember that there were moments where I'd go up to the front of the stage and I would sing a solo. And I remember that I felt very comfortable doing that. I was never nervous to sing a solo. But it never crossed my mind that I could do that because I wanted to. I was doing it because my parents were telling me to do that. So
Mhm.
I did that for a lot of years. Then in a middle school, I got more heavily involved with sports. I played football for 3 years. I played soccer. I played baseball. I was on the swim team. I did a lot of things like that. And it's not that I didn't really enjoy that, but I never felt like, oh yeah, this is the thing I want to really focus on. This is the thing I want to get good at. Um, every summer, my parents would tell me, okay, we're going to sign you up for something. What do you want to do this summer? Do you want to do
Mhm.
football? Baseball? Do you want to play soccer? Do you want to go? Do you want to be part of like a hiking group? What do you want to do? And for whatever reason, I don't remember exactly how I decided on this, but I said, are there like plays that people do? And and then my parents said, I don't know. Like
Were
we
you in
want to.
Utah? Did you grow
Yeah,
up
yeah.
here? Okay. Yeah, they're like, yeah, you live in the right state for that.
Yeah. I grew up in South Jordan, and so I said, like, are there like musicals? Like, do people perform? And and my mom said, I think so. I think one of my friends does things like that. So we got on the computer and we actually typed up like plays in Utah, like audition for plays in Utah and things like that. We looked around. We found a production that seemed kind of interesting. It was a production of Footloose that was getting put on by South Jordan Community Theater, which is now Kensington Theater. And and my mom said, "Okay, how do we do this?" And I said, "I don't know." And
Mhm.
so we looked around, and I was 15. It's not like I was a little kid; like I was 15 at the time. And so we got me registered for an audition. I learned a song that I was somewhat familiar with. I walked in, I did my audition, and I was in a musical, and it was a blast. I made tons of friends. It was groups of people. I had no idea who anybody was, and made some great friends and got to sing, got to dance. I got my exercise,
Mhm.
and it was really fun. And so I just enjoyed that so much. The next year, I auditioned for my school musical, and I got cast as the lead. And I had so much fun that I thought, well, maybe I kind of want to do this for a while. I actually ended up getting a scholarship to Utah Valley University in theater. So I studied theater for 2 years there. I have since switched my major into something else. But I and it was at that point that I realized I didn't want to pursue this as a career. I didn't want to go to Broadway. I didn't want to go to Chicago. I didn't want to go to LA. I was very comfortable being here, but I
Mhm.
still enjoy performing. And so I I took voice lessons for a number of years, and I switched my major over to something that was a little more consistent for me, something I enjoyed strictly because I enjoyed it, not because I was doing it for anybody else. And but since then, if there's a show that I really enjoy, I go and I perform. I love making new friends. I love singing is it's very therapeutic for me, and
Mhm.
I love exploring complicated characters. As you've seen, Jekyll and Hyde, very complicated, and it's for me, it's a way to continue to build community and continue to meet new people and have new experiences, and it brings me a lot of joy.
Oh, that's great. What was your first role in that Footloose?
I was the character of Jeter. He has 2 lines.
Okay.
But I was thrilled because I'd never been in a musical, and I was like, they gave me lines.
Yeah,
Exciting.
that's funny. Yeah, Footloose. That is probably one of my lesser favorite shows, Footloose, but I will go see it if people are doing it because the teens have a lot of fun. They have a lot of
Mhm.
fun. It's just the whole plot of like the town hating dance. I don't know. It's a little much.
It's a little, but so did you see it when I know you're familiar with Kensington Theater? Did you
Oh,
see it fairly?
yes.
Yeah.
Y-
So
Yeah.
the woman who directed that, Tony, she's the woman who directed Footloose when I was in it 10 years
No
ago.
way.
So I went and saw it, and there's some of my voice students who are in it. And so it was really fun to see that 10 years ago, that was where I started. And I realized that I
Hmm.
enjoyed it. Now, 10 years later, so much of my life is
Yeah.
centered performing and teaching people to perform. And
Hmm.
see that from a different perspective it was very cathartic.
Yeah. I bet. That was a great production. Kensington, I think, is probably the most underrated theater in this area. I mean, they have a live band for almost every or orchestra for almost every show they do.
True.
The quality of the sets and the singing and the I don't know. I've been very impressed everything I've seen from them.
Yeah, they put on great shows, and they have a good community. They're very tight knit,
Yeah.
and so a lot of times you go back and you'll see a lot of the same people continuing to do the shows. There are people who have been doing the band. I mean, when I did Footloose with them, the same woman who directed the band in Footloose 10 years ago when I did it is the same woman who directed it this time. And so she's been with them for a very long time. And a lot of the same people continuously come back and continue to be instrumentalists for productions. And so it's fun to go back and do shows years apart and you are familiar with the same people.
Hmm. Yeah. Are you a fan of Rachel's Reviews? Do you look forward to Family Movie Night, Female Film Critics panels, or the Talking Disney podcast? If so, please consider supporting the podcast by becoming a Patreon. As a patron, you get to access monthly events such as the watch-alongs and Q&As, where you get to talk to stars and find out the behind the scenes of the movie making industry. And you can pick what I review for Family Movie Night or even become a guest on the podcast. Podcasts and YouTube channels are expensive, and I really, really could use your help. I would so appreciate it. You also get to be a member of the Facebook group where we talk about all the films that we're seeing, and we have so much fun. Go to patreon.com/hallmarkies and select one of the Rachel's fan tiers. That's patreon.com/hallmarkies. Yeah, I mean, that is true. That is one of the benefits of being involved in theater in any way. It's just the community. And I think that's why it would, even as a patron and now critic, it was so hard during the pandemic to have it taken away because it's more than just entertainment. It's a whole community.
It was very difficult. Yeah,
Hmm.
I agree.
Yeah. Hmm. Well, the first time that you were in a review, I was looking at Utah Theater Bloggers, which is one I write for, was a production of Newsies uh, in Harriman, and the Russ Warren, he was very complimentary of yours. He says, leading the cast is Tanner Tate as Jack Kelly. From his first moment on stage, Tate is an engaging actor who can shoulder the burden of a leading role with ease. Tate has a magnetism that makes Jack a believable leader among the newsies. He also gives Jack a debonair style that makes I Never Planned on You a smooth charm offensive. And says Tate has the voice that sails through the score effortlessly. His rendition of Santa Fe is an impassioned desire for a better life, and he makes the world will know a fiery anthem for change. Pretty nice.
High praise.
That your mom's supposed to be stoked.
It's very flattering when people say things about me that I've heard people say about actors and performers that I've looked up to for a lot of years. It's a really weird experience because I mean I'm just a guy. Like, I go home at the end of the night and I make myself dinner, and I mean, I'm just a regular person and that's the way I see myself. And so people write those things about me and paint me as if I'm something larger than I feel that I am. It's weird because that's how I've seen other people in my life. But it's also incredibly flattering.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was really impressed with your performance in Jekyll and Hyde. And I mean, I went into it expecting, because I'd only seen one other performance at Draper Historic, and that was a Christmas Carol a couple of years ago. And I had seen most of the advertisements. I thought they just did like parody shows. I didn't realize that they did like other shows. And so I'm not a fan of, I don't love parody. So I just had never been. And but I wanted to see Jekyll and Hyde. And so, I was getting on my like community theater cap, ready to be like, this is not going to be, it'll be fun, but it won't be that great. And then I was just so impressed with all of the performers. I thought it was a very strong cast, and the dancing, the production, I mean, especially because it's a very small stage. Uh, and the way that you were able to capture the physicality of the role, especially in that second act, was, I thought, very impressive.
Thank you. Thank you. Jekyll and Hyde was an amazing experience. Up there in the top, probably three experiences with productions I've ever done in my entire life. I mean, the production staff was incredible. My director, Melissa Van Dam, she's not only become one of my greatest friends, but also she's a visionary. She works hard. She makes people feel welcome. And there are a couple things about Draper that they're working hard to rebrand themselves a little bit. For a long time, they had a board of directors. It was very consistent for a very long time. In recent years, they have brought in a lot of new directors, a lot of new blood, a lot of new ideas, and has revamped the theater a little bit. And so shows like Jekyll and Hyde, I also did Hunchback there last year. And so it's been fun to see them start to branch out and try different things. Jekyll and Hyde was very much a lot of people were in the Draper community, in the Draper theater community, they were a little bit nervous about, like, is this going to work? Is this like, are we going to sell tickets for this? It's not as well known as a lot of other shows but turns out we sold a lot of tickets for Jekyll and Hyde, and
it was basically sold out, I think, the night I went.
We sold out almost every night. So really, it was amazing. I miss it, and I don't miss productions that I'm in that often. A lot of times when they end, I'm appreciative of the experience, but I'm ready to move on to something new. That one I genuinely miss. It was extremely challenging, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
So when you have a role like that, how do you kind of approach the character? How do you, especially like I said, the physicality of the role?
Jekyll and Hyde was complicated, but it's something that I'd wanted to perform since I was 17. And so I'd been thinking about it off and on for a lot of years because it was a dream role of mine. What I started to think about, Jekyll, I played very similar to myself, a little bit more proper than I carry myself, very much shoulders back, but very earnest and very kind. And I'm not always extremely earnest and kind, but I tried to play him a little bit, very, very giving, very honest. Not only because I believed that's who he was as a person, but also because I needed to make the difference between him and Hyde so drastic and distinct that I tried to think of the opposites of every single thing that Jekyll was. But what I tried to, when I was developing the character of Hyde, I thought about animals that maybe Hyde could be, and I kept thinking about things like wolves, like very predatory animals, and I tried to incorporate. I studied pictures of those animals, and I tried to incorporate some of those things into the way that I carried myself as Hyde, um, which is kind of common, but in the community theater
Mm-hmm.
world, is to get that deep into character is not something that I was as comfortable with, and so it was very challenging for me, and very strange to be
Mm-hmm.
getting that uh, into that kind of territory with a character. Also, with Hyde, I had to explore. I was forced to explore some of the darker elements of humanity and of even of myself, and the frightening aspects of, because the last thing that I wanted was to seem like I was pretending to be something. I didn't want to seem like I was, oh, and now I'm going to be scary. Now I'm going to be a bad guy. I didn't want it to seem like that. I wanted it to seem real and authentic. And to do that, I had to explore the darker side of the human experience, and channel that into my performance, and things like, we as humans, we will have dark thoughts, we'll have scary thoughts, and fortunately as humans we are rational enough to say, I'm going to set that to the side, and I'm going to not act on those. When you're angry, sometimes you'll have thoughts that might frighten you. If someone betrays you, you'll have thoughts that frighten you. And as I said, fortunately, we as humans, we're rational beings, and we think, no, I'm obviously not going to act on that. The difference between rational human beings and Hyde is that Hyde is the embodiment of all of those frightening aspects of human nature. And so I had to explore those frightening tendencies and those frightening thoughts, and channel them into my performance to make it real, rather than being, oh, and now I'm going to be a scary guy who hurts people and things like that. And so it was challenging and it was frightening, and but it was incredibly rewarding, and really fun, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you have to get into that sort of uh that loss of control that
Mm-hmm.
makes, like you said, there's like an animalistic side when he becomes Hyde and loses that control that he has as Jekyll.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, here's what I said about the performance. I said the real standout of this production is the unbelievable performance by Tanner Tate, who I don't think I've seen before. It is shocking to see such a gorgeous belting voice in a humble little theater in Draper, especially as he is increasingly torn between Jekyll and Hyde. His performance grows and becomes so manic and intense, it's honestly better than this material or venue deserve. I don't give hyperbole lightly, but I was blown away by him. Whether it's the power ballad of This Is the Moment or the sexy, dangerous game, Tate and his beautiful voice and tremendous acting are outstanding and worth making the trip to Draper.
Thank you.
You're
Very flattering.
well, it must be fun though working with, because the both of the Emma and the Lucy I thought were both really strong as well, and especially though like something like Dangerous Game, like working with your fellow performers and making that pay off and work. That's got to be a journey.
It was a journey. It was a lot of trust, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of especially for Rachel, who played Lucy. Rachel and I, we got very close. I mean, for
Mm-hmm.
obvious reasons, had to get close.
Sure.
And there was a profound amount of trust involved with our performance. There was a lot of time spent just making sure we were comfortable together, um, and and same with, I mean, I spent a lot of time with my director, and we become good friends. But same with Rachel and I, because we had to spend so much time together to really develop a deep bond and a deep trust together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we've become very good friends. Actually, her and I just went to New York together with a couple of other friends just a couple weeks ago. And that doesn't happen with me with many performances, because, as I said, often when a performance ends, I'm very appreciative of it, but I'm prepared to move on and do something new and do something else that's exciting. But for that one, I really wanted to linger on it, and I wanted to treasure that experience. And so it was because of the intimacy of the emotions that we had,
Mm-hmm.
in order to make it believable on stage, that we bonded so deeply.
What did you see on your trip? Any shows?
We saw Back to the Future.
What'd you think?
Oh my gosh, it was amazing. It, there are a lot of people in the theatrical community who are kind of they're kind of naysayers about Back to the Future, because
Yeah.
it's very much a fan service musical. It's very goofy. It's very self-aware. The
Mm-hmm.
music is fun. It's so imaginative. Pays really great homage to the movie. And to me, it was the best show that we saw. I had more fun watching that show than I can remember having watching a musical in as long than I can remember ever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Going to New York, I highly recommend Back to the Future.
Oh,
If you
I want a New York trip so bad.
So after that, we saw Hadestown. We saw
Mm-hmm.
Six, a play called Goodnight Oscar, which just closed.
Mm-hmm. What'd you think of that?
Of Goodnight Oscar,
Mm-hmm.
fabulous.
Yeah.
Really, really.
Oh, that's cool. That's really, really cool. Well, I always ask the guests, what do you think is an overrated and an underrated Broadway musical? Like one that people are super into that you're like, yeah.
It's a good question. Let's see. That's currently on Broadway or
No,
that
just
has
any.
just in general?
Yeah.
It's a complicated question. I don't know. I might ruffle some feathers.
No, please. We want
Let's
we want the hot takes.
Well, one of them that not necessarily, I mean, I like it. I think it's a good musical, but I think there are a lot of others like it that don't get enough praise. I have to say Into the Woods, honestly.
Ah, yes.
And here's the thing is it's well written, it's fun, there's great characters, it's enjoyable. But I mean, Stephen Sondheim has worked on like 30 productions.
Yes.
And you know, when you ask someone, you say, oh, like I love Stephen Sondheim, they're like, oh, I love Into the Woods and things like that. But there's so many others that are just as good, if not better, that don't ever really get done. First of all, I understand because they're so difficult. It's such complicated music, and they're stories and complicated characters. But I mean, with our what we're going to talk about in a little bit, talking about shows we'd rather do, I talk about some. Into the Woods is one of them that I think there is another show that should be done more often that's not done. So I would have to say Into the Woods is probably the one that I'd say. There are other shows that are just as good that don't get done as often.
I'm with you on that. I think there's 6 companies that are doing Into the Woods next year because I have season tickets to a whole bunch. I'm just like, I mean, I don't know. Like, sure, there's things I admire about it, but I don't love it. I mean, I don't know. I just feel like it's subversion for subversion's sake. And that like the big takeaway is like dreams don't always turn out the way you think, and that's okay. And I'm like, yeah, we all know that. Like, big whoop. I don't know. I struggle. Well, so I'm with you 100% on that one.
It's so long. The first act is an hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah. And it's a bad one for community theater to do because it doesn't have that many roles. Like, no, I think especially for high school, I think that community theater, almost anybody who wants to participate should be able to be in a chorus scene, you know, because how do you know if you like something if you never get a chance to try? And so that's what's great about shows like Bye Bye Birdie or The Music Man or, you know, things like that, is that there's lots of, you can have just as many in this chorus as you want, you know, in those, but it's just not like that for Into the Woods. And so I don't get it. It's weird because I feel like it's seen as like the approachable Sondheim for Utah, you know, but like it's pretty edgy actually. So I don't know if that's true.
Like, girl, hello, little girl. You're like, ooh.
Yeah, exactly. I like Company a million times better.
Yeah, did you see it?
Is that what?
Did you see it when the Empress did it?
Yes. It was so good. I thought it was really impressive for community.
Yeah, but he said it was a wonderful experience.
Yeah, it was really good.
Hey, this is David from the Piecing It Together podcast, a podcast about movies and the movies that inspire them. For over 4 years, each week, a guest and I take a look at a new movie through the lens of what other movies we think were either an influence or connect in some other way. It's a fun, unique way to discuss films that leads to a great list of other movies to check out that either explore the same themes and ideas or maybe utilize similar filmmaking techniques. Including special episodes in our side series that twist the format, we've done over 200 episodes, so there's bound to be one on a film you've been thinking about and want to dig deeper into. So check us out on all the major podcasting apps and at piecingpod.com.
Well, what we are going to do this episode, we thought it would be fun to do something different, is we're going to go over some really popular shows, just like Into the Woods, and we're going to say, do this instead of that. And some of these are shows I really, really love, but they're done a lot. And so what's an alternative that you could do that would be fun and have a similar casting, similar tone, similar style, all of that fun stuff. So I'm excited. We've got about, 12 or so. So let's dive in. And some of these I got from the Utah Theater Bloggers as the most reviewed shows that they've had on there. So they're done a lot, at least here in Utah. And you still have the number one reviewed show in Utah is Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat.
Surprise.
Yeah. And if you were going to say, do this instead of doing Joseph, what would you say?
So this one, I had a hard time with this one because Joseph is a very distinctive show. It's, there's a popular, and I had a really hard time finding anything that matched the spectacle, that matched the feeling of the show. So I deviated a little bit from this one. I went for a show that has the same amount of spectacle, not quite the same kind of centered around one character, things like that. And you might not be familiar with this show. I saw it on Broadway 8 years ago. It was only on Broadway for maybe 3 months or so, and because of the spectacle, it's really hard to have it done. But it's a musical called Honeymoon in Vegas, and it's based off of the 90s movie Honeymoon in Vegas. And it's as you can imagine, big spectacle, lots of fun. There's skydiving Elvises. There's there's chase scenes and things like that. It was the most fun I've had on Broadway, like watching a show.
Yeah.
And I've never seen it done except on Broadway. The music is spectacular. It's really fun. There's some tender moments in the show. Lots of comedy. And so I would love to see that production done. It's not particularly edgy. Obviously Joseph is not really edgy hardly at all, but a little edgier. There's some modern humor in Honeymoon in Vegas. Obviously it's Vegas, and so there's a little bit of like edgier humor, but it's incredibly fun. And I think it deserves to be done at least one more time somewhere.
Yeah, that sounds really good. I hadn't even heard of that. So yeah, perfect. Well, my suggestion, I was thinking of something that had a little bit of a rock and roll vibe while also being biblical and allegorical. And so I thought of Children of Eden. I feel like it's not done very much. And it's a little bit surprising because you think like Utah would eat that up. But I haven't, the only time I've seen it was once at BYU years ago. They did it like 10 years ago, like a long time ago. And I think Centerpoint did it a couple of years ago. And it's really fun. It's got some great, Steven Schwartz got some great, songs. I think it has like a similar kind of energy to Joseph. The other one that I thought of is last year BYU did a version of Godspell that was really great and very different and creative, and I've never seen it anywhere else, but I think that if you could, that one, I think you could, they're pretty close, I think.
Yeah, I could see that also.
Yeah. All right. Well, next one is The Sound of Music. That has done a lot.
This one I couldn't quite find. I couldn't think of anything that really resonated with me with this one. So what did you get down for Sound of Music?
I think that doing something like, it's easy to sort of suggest another Rodgers and Hammerstein. And so, doing an Oklahoma or that's not done quite as much as, I mean, I would love if some of their more obscure properties were done. Something like a Flower Drum Song, or I mean, I don't even know if those are available to purchase, but I think it would be really fun. I mean, uh, I mean, most of their shows have like their outdated elements.
Yeah.
Of course, doing something like Carousel can be pretty cringy, but I think if you can come up with a creative way to kind of approach it in a new way, like this recent revival of Oklahoma they did a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
I think would be good. I think My Fair Lady, I mean, that has some cringe parts, but I think it's a uh um pretty good match for Sound of Music, and I don't feel like it's done quite as much.
I think so. And well, unfortunately, I think MTI is pretty understanding at this point, and you can request to take certain
Mhm.
lines out,
Yeah.
out. And from what I understand, Music Theater International and other licensing companies are pretty they're pretty lenient with certain older shows that have some outdated thematic
Mhm.
elements to.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Next up, you were in it, or can talk about Newsies. This has done so much. I mean, I have huge nostalgia for the movie and for this show. What do you think would be a good sub in for Newsies?
Newsies, first of all, Newsies is a blast.
Mm-hmm.
It was such a blast to be in that show. For this one, I put it was difficult because I couldn't find a show that had the same like large male ensemble and the like the music and the dancing and things like that, that held to that same family friendly standard. So I actually, for this one, I chose the musical Dogfight.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, Obviously it's not as family friendly of a show, but it has the same large male ensemble, the really fun catchy music, the prominent male and female lead, where there's conflict between them, and it's one that I don't see done hardly ever.
I have never heard of that one. Yeah,
It's a good
sounds
temporary. I don't think it was ever on Broadway, but it was off Broadway. And it's a large. It's based. I think it's during World War II, or maybe shortly after World War II, and it's a bunch of military men, and they all have to get dates. I won't spoil too much of the show, but they all have to get dates and bring them to a big party. And a lot of it is the men. A lot of the ensemble numbers are the men singing together, and it's really fun music. And very contemporary in the similar vein of like Newsies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I was thinking of all of a sudden now I lost it. What was I think even this is different as far as casting, but if you wanted another Alan Menken musical that's not done quite as much, although it is done a bit, but I was thinking of Sister Act, might be a fun one to do. I would be kind of different casting, but I think it could be fun.
Mhm.
I also think that Bye Bye Birdie would be a pretty decent sub. You've got quite a few solos, you've got quite a few chorus scenes for Bye Bye Birdie. And so I think that would be a pretty good sub in for Newsies.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Bye Bye Birdies. It's a great. That's one that it's very fun, and I don't think high schools take advantage of that show enough.
Yeah, we did it when I was in my high school, and I think it's a great show for high school because it has tons of solos and tons of crowd scenes. And
Mhm.
again, I think that especially for high school, anyone who wants to participate should be able to, because how do you know if you like something if you never get a chance to try it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Next, we have Into the Woods. I'm really curious what you picked for Into the Woods.
So this one, I picked another Sondheim show, and I picked Sunday in the Park with George.
I've never
And
seen that one. I'd like to.
oh my goodness, it's beautiful. It has a lot of it's very similar to Into the Woods in the sense that it has a lot of those scenes where there's a lot of people on stage, and they all have their own distinct characters, and they're all just kind of shooting lines at each other, just kind of out of the blue, which is very similar to Into the Woods. And it follows the same two central characters, which is very similar to how Into the Woods goes. And music is complicated, but not too complicated. And the messaging at the end is really beautiful. And it's very much an artist's show. It's very much about like the tortured artist and working out how to channel your emotions into your art, balancing your artistic desires with also relationships and things like that. It's really, really beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, for me, for Into the Woods, I was thinking more sort of the take on a fairy tale kind of approach. And so I was thinking Once Upon a Mattress would be a fun one that has like a similar energy. It's not quite as subversive, but I think it's not done that much. And I think it's got some really fun songs and people would enjoy it.
My first musical out of high school.
Oh, really?
And yeah.
Yeah. All right. Next we have the Addams Family. And it felt like, especially last year, every company did it. Halloween.
Yeah, everyone did the Addams Family. So this one took me a minute. I was trying to figure it out, and this one I actually picked Young Frankenstein.
Yeah. It's a good. I've never seen it, but I think it makes sense.
Oh, it's super fun because it has the Wednesday character. It has obviously Young Frankenstein, strong leading male. It has really fun, goofy, kind of eerie ensemble numbers that are they're kind of creepy, but in a really funny way, similar to the Addams Family. It pokes fun at horror tropes and things like that, and so I like it a lot.
Yeah. Well, this one's not currently available, but once it does become available, I think Beetlejuice is a natural one. It's definitely, saucier than Addams Family, but I think they have very similar energies.
Absolutely, I totally agree with that.
Yeah. All right. Next, we have Cinderella, and I just recently saw this at Empress, and I thought production was fantastic. My friend really enjoyed it.
Yeah, my friend Joy, who was in Jekyll and Hyde with us, she played Ella, and she was remarkable.
Yeah, it was really, really, really good. The one I would have, I think it's a different energy, but I think it could work. Is Shrek the Musical, which is performed quite a bit, but I think it is so funny, and you just got kind of this fairy tale vibes. And Lord Farquaad, unbelievable, absolutely hilarious. And I'm not that big of a Shrek person, and I saw it at Murray Arts in 2021, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be lame. And I went and I was blown away. I thought it was so funny, and it was I swear it was like 104 degrees. I don't know how they did it. It was so hot out in the sun. Oh, but they powered through, and I don't know. I just think it's a show that was a million times better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I had a similar experience with Shrek. I saw it at Harriman back in like 2013, and similar experience. I didn't really know what to expect. I ended up laughing a lot.
Yeah, it's really funny. Yeah.
For Cinderella's another one that I couldn't really think of one that really struck me the most. And I can't really think of anything off the top of my head that I would, because the hard thing is that Cinderella sells a lot of tickets, and so people will always go and see it.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to find something that will get the same effect that people get from Cinderella.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think they sold out at the Empress for Cinderella. And I mean, we'll talk about Music Man, but I was blown away that this production in South Jordan that I recently saw, the huge auditorium, huge high school auditorium, sold out.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's why you keep doing Music Man. People love it. And I mean, I love it, but I realized we skipped Beauty and the Beast. And I think that one is tricky. I mean, I have a lot of nostalgia. It's be easy to just sub in one of the other Disney.
Mhm.
And I'm very like hit and miss with those Disney ones. But yeah, I think it would be interesting if you did if something like the other Phantom. I mean, it
Mhm.
does not for kids, but it has like a similar energy as far as someone hiding and this not the Phantom of the Opera, Andrew Lloyd Webber, the other one I forget. It was
Yeah.
that I think that could be interesting.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I know Hale Theater did that several years ago. They did
Hmm.
the other. I didn't get to see it, unfortunately, but I've heard it's very interesting.
Hmm.
Um, for Beauty and the Beast, I put The Mystery of Edwin Drood.
Oh. I've never
Because
seen that, but I one of the local companies is doing it, and I'm excited to finally see it.
I know what you're talking about, but I can't remember who it was. I
Yeah.
remember announced it. Yeah, it has that same lots of larger than life characters, really goofy dialogue. Um, big. It's a bigger show. There's not necessarily like an ensemble in it, but a lot of roles. Similar to Into the Woods, where there's just a ton of roles available.
Hmm.
Um, and the aspect of that the ending changes every single night you perform. So you could see the show 8 times or 9 times, and it would be the different ending every single time. And that's very unique to the Mystery of Edwin Drood. And so I fortunately it's getting more recognition in the last couple of years, and more people are willing to do that. And I
Hmm.
think that's a good opportunity to take.
Yeah. I would really, really like to see that.
We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies merch store.
Are you looking for that perfect gift for the postable, hardy, or Hallmarky in your life?
What about getting that t-shirt or hoodie that will help you stand out at your next holiday party?
Now is the time to check out the Hallmarkies merch store.
Full of festive designs by artists like Jessica Miller, Carrie from Hallmark Comics, and more.
You can even have more than just shirts, but totes, cell phone cases, notebooks, mugs, and more.
And it isn't just Hallmark. We have designs for Anna Green Gables, Man from Snowy River, The Nanny, and more.
Every purchase at the merch store goes to help support the podcast and allows us to make the great content you know and love.
There are frequent sales, so go to tpublic.com/stores/hallmarkies or see the link in the description.
That's tpublic.com/stores/hallmarkies.
Next, we have the Scarlet Pimpernel.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that?
Scarlet Pimpernel, I put Man of La Mancha.
Oh, okay. Good one.
Because Man
Yeah.
It has the big male leading role. It has the big female role. Lots of big solos. There's drama. There's a little bit of comedy. It's not quite as funny now, but it's a little bit more dramatic than Scarlet Pimpernel. But in terms of musicality, it has just those really, really big numbers that Scarlet Pimpernel.
Yeah. Well, that would be a good one. The one I thought of is to do Oliver.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think it has a like similar energy, maybe not quite as silly, but similar energy, similar style of songs, and I think that that could be fun. Yeah. All right. Next, we have Mary Poppins, and I've said this before on this show. I don't really love this adaptation of Mary Poppins. It's not my favorite, but it's done all the time, and so it's like, what would you do instead of Mary Poppins?
It's a complicated one, and that's another one that I had a hard time thinking of because because Mary Poppins is so distinctive. It's so it's so particular, and I mean, there's a reason it's so famous is because unique in the vision of the show is so unique, and there's elements of fantasy, but is it really fantasy or is it imagination or really what's going on? And there's so many distinctive characters and they're really fun. And it's just so distinctive that was another one I had a really hard time trying to come up with something for. and all I could really, ultimately, all it could come back to was like this, like similar Disney shows like Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and things like that. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang is the one that I kept coming back to, and I couldn't get out as a replacement for Mary Poppins, but that one's done just as often. So
Yeah. Well, the one I thought of is I feel like it has somewhat similar energy. It's a little bit darker, but to Camelot.
oh
I feel like the
yeah.
style of the songs kind of similar, and a Camelot or maybe even Peter Pan, I think has a similar kind of energy as well. That would work pretty well.
And it's true that we don't see Peter Pan done very often.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand it's because there's like modern sentiments and people are upset about a lot of the things that get put on stage in Peter Pan. And that won't be hard to take some of those elements out and still have the same story.
Yeah.
And so I understand why it's not done as often, but there's a lot of fun stuff in that show too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think people understand. People know. It's okay. I mean, there are some shows that it is just tough. Like Thoroughly Modern Millie. I don't think you can do it. Like that whole human trafficking plot is just bizarre and it's bad. It's bad.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what about The Music Man? What do you think's a good sub-in?
I did get one, and I can actually almost guarantee that you've probably never heard of this musical. So the interesting story behind this musical is that it was put on Broadway, I think back in 2008. It's got music by Alex. And get this, it's a story about a con man who organizes a choir to make money for him, presenting himself as like this incredible musical genius.
Yeah.
And plans to abscond with all their money when they're about to perform and then leave. But because he falls in love with a woman, he decides to stick around.
And this is Alan Menken, right?
Yeah.
Did this. Yeah. I've never seen it, but I did an episode recapping the movie years ago on my other podcast. Yeah. And I was like, there's a Broadway musical about this.
Yeah, it's called Leap of Faith, and believe it won Best Musical, but it only ran on Broadway for like 3 months or so. And I do with it was 2008. It was right during the housing crisis and things like that. And so a lot of shows were kind of going under at the time, and that's what they kind of blamed it on. But I was reading the synopsis of it, and I was like, and I'd studied this in the past, and I was like, this is literally the plot of Music Man. Like, this is almost to exactness the plot of Music Man. And so I think it would be to have that same fun. There's the con man. He's trying to take the money from the people, but he ends up falling in love with the town and things like that. But with this one, it's a gospel choir instead of just like a bunch of trumpeters or things like that. And so it's one that I'd love to see done.
Yeah, I would love to see it too. Well, the one I thought of for this one is Carousel. I feel like it has like a similar unlikable lead protagonist that has an arc. It has similar iconic songs. It has similar sort of spots for dancing and old Americana moments. I think that it's maybe it's more problematic than Music Man, although Music Man can be pretty problematic.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I feel like they're a pretty good swap.
Yeah.
All right. Next we have Romeo and Juliet. And I feel like of all of the Shakespeare plays, like his main ones, the ones that are done a lot, I feel like this is my least favorite. I would rather see almost anything else. So you'd almost fill in the blank with any others of his plays. But yeah, I would certainly rather see like 12th Night or Midsummer Night's Dream or The Tempest or any of them.
Yeah, I would instead of Romeo and Juliet, I would love to see King Lear put on stage.
Yes. Or Othello. I would love to see Othello.
Oh yeah, like I've never seen a live production of it, and I'd love to see a tragedy that's not done very often.
Yes.
And King Lear is so heavy, but there's they're such complicated characters that similar to I mean, Romeo and Juliet, they're not quite as complicated. The relationship dynamics between like the Montagues and the Capulets, this is an age-old, feuding families, things like that, and that's interesting. But the characters themselves don't seem extremely complicated. So I would love to see something like King Lear put on stage where there's so much more inner conflict happening in each of those characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Well, next we have A Christmas Carol, and this is a hard one because it's just part of so many traditions
Mhm.
that it's a hard one to sub out for. But I think Opa did this, or one of them did this last year. But I think you could sub out for Little Women. I think it has enough Christmas feels that people will be fine with it, and it has some really good songs, and it's a classic story that goes back just like Christmas Carol, and so I think that would be a pretty good sub.
Mhm. I would agree with Little Women. Yeah, there's that whole Christmas sequence, and it's really fun.
Mhm.
And it's also female led, which is it's really fun to have like such a female led cast.
Yeah.
Um, I would say a lot of theaters are starting to branch out into different. They're still doing Christmas shows during Christmas time, but they're starting to branch out into shows like A Christmas Story,
Mhm.
which new, and then Elf the musical, which is also very new. And even though a lot of musical theater people will they'll kind of poo-poo those shows, especially Elf the musical, they're actually very fun,
Mhm.
um, very goofy, really fun music, great characters, funny jokes, fun humor. And so even though Christmas Carol is it's such a staple, especially I think in the Utah tradition. Um,
Yeah.
I think I'm glad that people are starting to branch out into different Christmas stories, that can still carry the Christmas feeling and the Christmas tradition,
Mhm.
but for lack of a better way to put this, are more fun to watch.
Mhm. And I'm really excited because Pioneer Theater Company is doing a brand new take on Christmas in Connecticut, which is a movie I love. They're doing that this year. Yeah. And a friend of mine saw it in Connecticut last year and really enjoyed it. And so I'm really excited to see something very fresh for the holidays.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So that'll be fun. All right. We got a couple more. Footloose is next up. What do you
Mhm.
think would be a good sub out for Footloose?
Footloose is I kind of put Leap of Faith with Footloose and Music Man. I said that would be a good one
Mhm.
to for each of those, because they both have the strong male. It has a strong male lead. It has the fun, like kind of the troubled person dynamic to it.
Mhm.
And so that was one that I just kind of put down for both Music Man and Footloose.
Well, one that I thought of, and it's a little bit sillier, but it's got as far as the teenage cast and everything. I thought of the 25th annual Putnam Spelling Bee.
Oh my
Might be a
gosh,
fun sub out.
I love the Putnam County Spelling Bee.
Yeah.
Really fun one.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that because it has it's not quite like a huge cast, but it has a number of characters in it.
Yeah.
Plus, audience participation is really really fun.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Then we have Singing in the Rain. And I do love this staging of Singing in the Rain that I've seen it so many times. I really do. I love it. But what would you swap in for Singing in the Rain?
For Singing in the Rain, I put Anything Goes because
Ah,
it does
good one.
numbers. It has like the goofy songs. Has the big ensemble numbers that where
Mm-hmm.
then individual numbers where there's one or two people on stage, but then they have kind of a dance break together and then they sing again and things like that. Um, and so I think Anything Goes is one that I would love to see done more often because
Yeah.
it's
So good. Did you see the pro shot they did with Sutton Foster
I did
and
not.
oh, you got to see it. I think you can watch it online. It was outstanding. Really, really, really good. Um, yeah, that's a good pick for Singing in the Rain. I thought of 42nd Street. I recently just saw it at Center Point. It was a
I
little
saw it.
boring for me, but the dancing and the singing were a lot of fun, and it's got kind of like your young ingenue trying to make it big, and I think it has some similar themes.
Yeah, yeah. I saw it at Centerpoint also, and I actually wrote a review about it.
Oh, you
So
did?
it
Yeah.
was the dancing was great. It's my first time ever seeing it, and so it was fun to
Yeah,
see
the
all the dance.
dancing and the costumes were unbelievable.
Yeah, and actually it was good because a lot of Bingham High School is doing 42nd Street for their musical this year, and a number of my students go to Bingham, and so it's been fun to be more familiar with musical to help them prepare for their auditions and things.
Yeah. Well, last one, and this is this might be my favorite musical. It's right up there
Mhm.
with Les Mis for me. It's Bright Star. I absolutely love. I will see anybody who puts it on. I will see it multiple times. I just love this show so much. To me, it's like the perfect combination of everything you could want in a show. Like it has funny parts, it has emotional parts, it's dramatic, it's got great spots for dancing, great spots for the songs that I think are really good. I love Bright Star. So
Mhm.
it's hard for me to kind of pick something that I love. But I do think there's a show that's rarely done that they did at Hale Center Theater years ago, and I absolutely loved it, and it stayed with me. I would love to see it again. Is the Spitfire Grill, and I
Oh
think that
yeah.
it has a similar aesthetic and feel, and blues grassy style songs, and I think it would be. I would love if a local company did it.
I feel like I'm remembering. Someone down in St. George was doing the Spitfire Grill this year. I think in the next couple months they're doing it, or maybe they just did it. I can't remember
Yeah.
exactly, but I remember because I was going down there to review a bunch of Tuacon shows, and I remember looking around seeing if there was anything else happening, and I remember seeing that someone was doing Spitfire Grill. I can't remember exactly who, but it's down south. For this one, I put another show that's not done very often. Pioneer Theater is doing it next year, and Bonnie. So I put Bonnie and Clyde.
Ah, okay. That's a good one. Good
Similar,
sub.
the male female dynamic. Obviously a little bit different than Bright Star. A little bit dark. I mean, Bright Star is pretty dark a lot of the time, but
Yeah.
keeps it light. It keeps it fun. Bonnie and Clyde, it sits in the darkness just a little bit more. It's a little bit more of like a sultry tone to it, and but the music is really fun. It has that like southeastern feel to it. I think it's a great one.
Mhm. Yeah, that would be good. I've never seen it, but I want to see it.
Mhm.
I'm looking forward to it coming to Pioneer Theater. So there we go. We did it. This was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for doing this
Sure.
with me. I appreciate it. And let us know if you're listening what you would sub out for these different ones. I'll put the list in the description. So if you want to do your own video or your own blog or whatever with what you would pick, you've got it right there, or just put in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And if people want to follow you on social media, that kind of stuff, how do they do that?
My Instagram is at Tan the Man Tate. I have a YouTube channel that you can just look up. I've done a couple singing videos, and I'm hoping to do I'm planning to do a couple more. I have a podcast called Tanner Talks About Stuff That Happened, where I talk about history. I just released an episode actually about the history of Broadway, so that's really fun. Yeah, so Instagram is the best way to kind of follow what I'm doing.
Do you have anything coming up? Any projects?
I'm taking a break for a little while. I'm a little bit burned out from all the shows that I was
Sure.
doing. There's a couple things on my eyes on next year. The first show that I absolutely am going to be part of is Sweeney Todd at Draper.
Oh, that'll be
Yeah.
amazing.
Music directing Anastasia also at Draper next December.
Okay, great. Well, we'll look forward to that. And thanks again. Really appreciate it.
Of course.
And you all can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. Check that out. And at rachelsreviewstheater.com. And if you are listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. That really helps a lot. And if you're watching on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that. And then we also have the Patreon group and merch store to check out. And thanks again. It was so great to meet you. And we will definitely have to have you back on.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.